Berris, it is such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Rhonda. It's wonderful to see you. It's a shame it's not in person,
I
but it's great to
know.
see you on screen.
I keep saying one of these days we're going to make the trip across the water and get down to Australia again. Rick and I got, as you know, Rick and I got married in Australia.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of home for us. So we love Brisbane and we love Sydney, but Brisbane's probably our favorite. Isn't that where you are?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is. And you
yeah.
got married just not far, a few
Not far.
kilometers from where I live. Yeah.
So I'm so glad. And we've not done this before. You and I have met up several times, over the
Yes.
years in the US and in Australia, but we've not done anything like this. So I'm so excited to have you on
Me too.
and be able to talk about this subject. So the subject we're going to be chatting about is using liquid herbs in your practice and really how to leverage those liquid herbs in a way that gives your patient the best benefit. And I thought, who better to talk about this than you, being the seasoned clinician that you are? So for those of you, the listeners that don't know you, give us a little bit of a background, how you got into, wellness, herbal medicine, what your life journey is with this and how long you've been practicing and all that. So we want the whole story.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda. I'll give you a bit of my background. And the reason I got into natural medicine was that when I was in my early to mid 20s, I had two babies, 14 months apart. First one, 10 months after I was married. And I lived in a remote mining town in Western Australia, 5,000 kilometres from family and friends. And that wasn't such a good idea because I had postnatal depression quite severely after my second child. And I went to doctors. When I came back to Brisbane, I went to doctors and gynecologists. And the options that were offered to me was at the age of 25, a hysterectomy, because the doctor said, if you don't have a uterus and you don't have periods, you won't be getting the premenstrual exacerbation of all of this, postnatal stuff. Right. And I thought, I knew nothing about health at that point in time, but that didn't seem like a good idea. And of course, I know now it wouldn't have helped anyway. And I was offered hormone therapy, those sorts of things. None of those were appealing to me. So I went to an acupuncturist naturopath. And within, I think, 2 months of seeing that person, I was absolutely fine. No PMS, no postnatal depression. And this is probably 18 months after the birth of my baby. It went on for a long time.
Wow.
And anyway, so I thought, whoa, there's something in this. So that's why I eventually started studying herbal medicine and naturopathy, and that's the same for many of us. I think we do it based on our own personal experience.
It's so true. And then we end up focusing on the very thing that we have experience in, the thing that we've overcome, because you can speak to it from experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I went to naturopathic college as a single parent by that time. And so I studied part-time, and the first semester I did herbal medicine, it was like, oh yeah, this is okay. And I was very interested in herbs always. And I thought, oh yeah, but I thought, gee, I'd like a bit more information here than what I'm getting from this lecturer. Then second semester, we get a new lecturer, and that was Kerry Bone. And that was the best thing that's ever happened in my life. Well, one of the best things, I have to say. Because all of a sudden, here was this person that had this great in-depth knowledge of herbal medicine and explained it very well, went into the research. It was just phenomenal. I thought, this is what I want.
Yeah. And I love that you guys have carried this relationship, obviously, all these years later, that he was your favorite instructor.
That would have been 40 years ago or more.
Oh my gosh.
The first time Kerry walked into the classroom. And so I had him for 5 years or 4.5 years of herbal medicine. And he used to walk into the class, sit on a chair in front of the class with a folder of research papers in front of him. And we might cover one herb per night or whatever, depending on what the herb was. I think echinacea went for at least 2 different lectures, of course.
Of course.
And he would sit there and he would just talk about the herb. He never gave a handout, and he would occasionally get up and write something on the whiteboard. Not a lot. He would sit there and he would talk. And then occasionally he'd pull a research paper out of the folder and he'd read out some information from it. for me, that was just, I loved it. I loved it. And just,
Wow.
and really, when Carrie talked about herbs, it sank in with me. It was
Well,
just
for him, he makes it come alive.
right.
It's a part of the fiber of who he is. These
Absolutely.
living
Yeah.
plants and these phytochemicals and all this activity that happens in there, he knows it, and he knows it so well. And he's like really committed his life to it, which is why we love so much using MediHerb, because that's his kind of brainchild. But that whole process of how he
Absolutely.
created these herbs, it has very quickly and rightfully so risen to be the #1 herbal brand in the world.
Yes. And, so I was very lucky to be taught by Carrie for all those years. Then I went on to teach at that same college, and students of mine have gone on to teach. So it's a wonderful sort of lineage, really, I think. But it was Carrie that really got me into herbal medicine, but it was my, really developed and nurtured my interest in herbal medicine, really. And for me, then there was no turning back. The majority of my practice was always going to be herbal medicine. And in those days, I've been in practice now for 32 years. And for the first 10 years of my practice, roughly, we had no tablets. We had only liquids.
No kidding.
No tablets, because there were
Wow.
MediHerb weren't producing tablets back then. And there was no good quality herbal tablets around, really. So I only used MediHerb liquids in my clinic. I used some nutritional supplements, but as far as herbal medicine went, it was MediHerb liquid herbs. So every one of my patients took away a bottle of liquid herbs. Sometimes they took away 2 bottles. They might have taken one to have during the day and another one to have at night to help sleep or something.
Wow.
My practice was built, a successful clinical practice was built on liquid herbal medicines.
What's your favorite liquid herb?
Oh,
would you pick one?
Look, no, it's like asking someone. People always say this, like asking someone to pick their favorite child.
I know. I kind of know.
I would have to say ashwagandha.
I love
is
that herb.
Way up there. There's probably 4 or 5 I could say my favorites, and ashwagandha, always the one that comes to mind first of all.
It's one of my absolute favorite herbs because it's such a good multitasking herb, and I love it because it's safe for anyone at any age, at any time. It plays well in the sandbox. It doesn't compete with any pharmaceutical drugs. Like, it's just as say you could give it to someone in their 80s and you could give it to a 5-year-old. Like, you could just.
And in actual fact, there's a lot of research to support it as the best tonic for children.
Yes.
Best tonic for children.
Yeah.
And also a really good tonic for the elderly. And of course, it's good for everybody in between as well. Yeah. So it's my favorite herb for children, without a doubt.
So let's talk about then these liquid blends that you made, because that's what I really want to dive in with you on this topic. When you create these liquid blends, what type, now with all this clinical history you have, what types of clinical blends are you making? What kind of herbs are you putting? What conditions are you dealing with that you think are best suited for these liquids? Because in the US, we sometimes, practitioners, are a little nervous about knowing how to put the herbs together and oh my gosh, there's a minimum and a maximum, and so many mils per week translates to how many, like it gets a little overwhelming. And so then they just go, oh, forget it, I'm just going to give the tabs. Yeah. But there's some liquids that we can't get as well in the tabs that might be better suited or some tabs that those herbs may be better suited as a liquid. So how do you use them now, the liquid blends?
Look, I do use a lot of the herbal tablets without doubt in my clinic, but I have never stopped blending liquid herbs. And every time I go to blend a liquid, I love it. I always think I was probably some sort of witch in a past life because I just love this process so much. Look, I think some of the most common blends I would do these days, blends for the nervous system with adaptogens, adrenal tonics, maybe nervous system herbs in them. So I think if you don't have a lot of experience doing liquids and you're feeling a little bit nervous about it, I think just make up a few blends that you can pre-make.
Yes.
And you can have them there, maybe in a 200 ml bottle or 100 ml bottle, whatever works for you. 100 ml, if we're dosing 5 mil 3 times a day, or 7.5 twice a day, so that 15 mil a day. If you do 100 mil, that's, you know, almost, that's about a week, and 200 mil will last 2 weeks. So you can, I usually blend in 200 mils.
That's how I do it too.
Yeah. So I think if you can just make up some blends, and I'll maybe, you know, I'll give you one that I use a lot. You know, I tend to do it very individually for my patients as they come in. But for, you know, all of our patients are going to need adaptogens. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Especially now.
Yes, adaptogens and adrenal tonics.
Yep.
So one of my favorite blends would be, it's always going to have ashwagandha in it.
Yay!
And then I use either Romania or licorice
for the adrenals.
Usually one or the other when I'm doing a liquid blend. And then I would use something like maybe rhodiola if I'm wanting the adaptogenic and tonic effect.
Yep.
Or if I'm wanting a stronger adaptogenic effect, I would use Siberian or Eleuthero.
Yep, Eleuthero.
Instead of, you know, and I might just put those 3 herbs in, especially if it's Romania, because they
play well with Burgoyne.
Yeah, I love the blend of Romania, rhodiola, and ashwagandha. I absolutely love it. And it's one I use in my clinic a lot. So if you wanted to just do that blend, you could do, I would normally do, if we're looking at it, I normally
but
we can't 200 ml.
We can't get we don't have liquid rhodiola.
Oh my God, you don't. All right.
No, I wish we did, but we have ashwagandha and we have Romania. So then I would say Eleuthero.
Use Eleuthero, absolutely. Yes.
Do you use equal parts? How do you break that out?
The ashwagandha is a little bit lower dose. You could do equal parts, or if you wanted to add a little bit more, I'll give you that formula. You could do equal parts of that, absolutely. Whether you're doing 100 mil or 200 mil, do equal parts and dose it 15 mil a day in 2 to 3 divided doses. If, for example, because the Eleuthero doesn't have a lot of tonic effect,
right?
It's more adaptogenic, which is fabulous. So if you wanted to add just a little bit more tonic effect with that, you could add a little bit of Korean ginseng. And you don't need very much to get that tonic effect in there. So if I was doing that, say if we did, sorry, I have to think in 100 mil as opposed.
That's okay. That's how I like to think about it too. We can do ashwagandha. So if you just bumped that up a little bit, so you had maybe 40 mils of ashwagandha?
I would do, if you're doing 100, ashwagandha is a little bit lower dose.
Oh, the lower dose. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the,
I would do 35 of each Romania and Eleuthero, and 30 of ashwagandha.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to add a little bit of Eleuthero to that, just to bump it up a little bit, what you could do is do 30 of each of those 3 and add 10 mil of Korean ginseng.
Ginseng, yeah.
Those
formulas. Yeah, go ahead.
First formula would be 30 of ashwagandha, 35 each of Romania and Eleuthero. And if you wanted to add Korean ginseng just to give it more tonic effect and just to increase energy a little bit faster, maybe, then I would do 30 of each and 10 of the
Korean ginseng.
And they would be good formulas just to have in your clinic, and they're going to suit a whole range of people.
And you know, the nice thing about that particular formula right there, because we can get all those herbs in the US. I am contending for liquid rhodiola. I think our chances of getting it are next to none, but that's okay. I'm still contending for it. But that particular formula, as we mentioned before, would be good for literally anyone at any age, regardless of what they're doing, but it's going to be a nice little energy tonic as well. It'll give a nice little boost to energy, as well as that adaptogenic, which I love, that yin and yang. You know, it's like it brings you up, but yet it has that calming and very, not sedating, but very calm, very peaceful. Like I always say, it puts your butt in the chair. You're not flopping around like a balloon out somewhere. You're very stable.
I love the combination of ashwagandha and Korean ginseng together. And it can sound counterintuitive. You've got the ashwagandha, which is more calming, and the Korean ginseng, which is more stimulating with some adaptogenic effect. It's not overly stimulating, but it really helps to we call that combination for the tired and wired person, basically.
That's a good one. What's another one that you like to use?
Another formula?
Yeah.
I'll just work. We work a little bit more with this one?
Yeah.
If people have already got these liquids in their clinic to use for mixing, if you wanted to, you've got a depressed patient and you want to add some St. John's wort in there. So, you can't add St. John's wort to the formulas I've just given you because there's not enough space.
Not enough room, yeah.
So this is where maybe we could combine a liquid and a tablet if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So we could go with the ashwagandha because we want the adrenal tonic effect. And then we could put St. John's wort in there as the antidepressant nervous system herb, right? 35 ml in 100. And then you could give the rhodiola and the rhodiola ginseng tablets.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great idea.
So this is how I balance what to give people.
I think so often here, the practitioners in the US, we tend to think that more is better, i.e. more supplements. And we want to give a tablet and then a liquid, and then we're going to deal with this. And then and the patient walks out the door with 10 things. And I think that where the power and the magic and the beauty of the liquid herbs are, is that when you understand how multifaceted they are, you literally can use one herb, and it doesn't, ashwagandha is also very beneficial for the immune system, but you wouldn't use it like echinacea for the immune system, but you're giving a gentle nudge to the immune system as you're reducing the stress and improving the adaptogenic potential of the body. So there's so many other actions and facets to these herbs that I think we in the US anyway, I think sometimes we get in a box. We think echinacea, immune, St. John's wort, depression, valerian, nerve, like we just put everything in a box, and there's no boxing. We should undo the box and think about these herbs in a much more broad perspective.
Yeah. And look, I don't know any herbalists or naturopaths who use herbal medicine that would give a single herb to a patient.
Yeah.
If someone comes in with depression, you give them St. John's wort. We might give them St. John's wort, and we might give it to them as a single tablet, for example. But it's not going to be the only herb we give them.
You're going to use adaptogens, or you're going to use some other things to tonify the body and support the body. Yeah.
If someone's depressed, you've got to support the HPA axis. So you're automatically thinking adrenal tonics and adaptogens. You can't get away from that.
No.
And then you've got to think about sleep. Are they sleeping well? So there's a whole range of things. And I think it's probably a good time, Rhonda, for me to highlight what I think are the major advantages of doing liquid blends.
Yes.
Because as I say, in the early days, I built my practice on liquid blends, and they are still a major part of my practice. Yeah. And so the main advantages I see is first, we can individualize the treatment. So I've just given you some formulations, 3 formulations using a lot of the same herbs, a few of the same herbs in each one, that we can just tweak a little. Is the patient depressed? Do they need a little bit more energy and more tonifying, add a little bit of Korean ginseng? Right. It's not that hard to do. And you can pre-make these formulations, and then you can give them to individual patients. And once you've been doing this for a little while, you might think, oh, I like that formula, but I think if I just change it this little bit for this one patient, it'll be a little bit better. And that just takes time to develop that and have confidence in doing it. But the only way you're going to have confidence is to actually start doing it. You can't wait till you've got complete confidence to do something, because you'll never do it. Start doing it.
Are going to start on the tricycle with the training wheels. It's not only a tricycle, but it's a tricycle with training wheels. And you're going to be referring to the books and looking at the minimum maximum and trying to figure out how you want to do it. And then you're getting feedback from the patient. How's the patient doing? And the patient says, it worked okay, but I'm still not feeling like I got enough energy. And you think, oh, I forgot, I should have put the ginseng in there. So the ginseng, or maybe you need more of the adaptogenic tonic, the adaptogenic herb. So the patient feedback is going to be instrumental in helping you be able to decide how you want to tweak it. But you'll get some biceps built before long. It doesn't take very long, and you start really getting confident.
Patients will come in with more information. That's like, oh, I've been feeling, I forgot to tell you I was really tired. I forgot to tell you this. I say, oh, okay, look, I'll just tweak your formula a bit. You don't have to add another bottle of tablets.
Yes, thank you.
You can just tweak the formula, and look, patients love that. Probably one of the most common things I've had said to me by patients when they've rang to make an appointment and suss me out, they will say, one thing I do not want is to walk out with a bag of tablets.
That's right. We get that here too. They don't want that.
I'm so sick of that. And individual prescribing. It's not hard to just tweak formulations that you're already using to individualize them. One of the other key things is that it sets you apart from other practitioners, because people know that you have the ability and the skill and the knowledge to blend these liquids. You're not just getting a bottle of tablets off the shelf and giving it to them, that someone has sold you and told you this is good for this. You've gone through the thought processes about what that particular patient actually needs.
And they can't get it anywhere else.
And they can't, and that is the other thing. If people want that, if it's working for them and they want to keep taking it, they have to come back to you. They can't go to online and get it. They can't go to the local pharmacy or health food store and say, look, I'm taking this. Have you got something similar? They have to come back to you to get it. And look, I had a patient come to me for a second appointment once, and I've not so much now, but I used to always mix my herbs in the room with my patients. I had all my liquids in the consulting room, and I'd mix them in front of the patient. And I had a patient come back for her second appointment once, and she said, look, I have to tell you, I was so impressed with you last time. She said, you talked to me and you got all the information, then you just got up and you mixed all these herbs together, and you didn't even have to look at a book to see what you needed to give me. And I said, no, that's what we do. We're educated. We've done all these years of study in order to be able to do this.
That's right.
And she was really impressed. So really, it's a great skill, even if you're not doing it in front of the patient, even if you've got them pre-mixed, you can say, look, okay, I'm just going to go out the back and mix you a formula that will just suit you.
And the more that you can learn about the individual herbs, inside Clinical Academy, I teach how to get a 3x5 card. This is very rudimentary and very basic, but write the name of the herb on the top, the botanical name and the common name, and then write the actions of the herb, then write the contraindications down if there are any, and then write the dose. And then you'll know. And then you just look at, you think, oh, is calendula the right herb? Let me go look. And you just pull the card. You don't have to get a book out. You don't have to look. You can at least at a quick glance, grab that 3x5 card and go, yes, I think this is the right herb. And then you can go dig a little bit more, but it's got the dose on there. It's got the actions on there. You know how to use it. You know if there's any contraindications. Everything that you need that's quick is right there on that card. And that, I think sometimes practitioners get overwhelmed because they think, okay, I really want to do this, but I don't know where to go. Where do I go look? And how do I find information? And all of that. But we've got the herbal list of herbs by actions, and then we have the list of actions by their herb, or the herbs according to them. Those two, you don't need anything else. You just need to know how to dose them, and that's it.
That's right. So a few things that we need to be cautious of.
That was my next question. Is there anything we need to be worried about?
Don't be nervous about using liquids, but there are some things we need to think about. So we have to think about contraindications in pregnancy and lactation, particularly pregnancy. And I can get a list of, no, actually, we don't have a list for liquid herbs. But if you don't already have it in your clinics and you're using herbal medicine, a really good book is a herbal safety book written by Kerry and Simon. And that's got a list of herbs in pregnancy and lactation, and that would be very useful.
I'll make sure that we link that in the show notes. So we've got that herbal safety book link in the show notes. You can order it from Standard Process, but it's called Herbal Safety. But I'll make sure that we put a link in there.
So that's one thing. But look, on that topic, when I'm treating patients who are pregnant, female patients who are pregnant, and that's not a big part of my clinic. It's not my main focus of practice. But I don't prescribe herbs unless I need it.
Yep. I am of that same opinion because I don't know what the patient is thinking. And if there's anything that does happen to happen with the pregnancy, I know people, and people are going to want to blame what they don't understand. What I don't want is for them to come back and say, you gave me ashwagandha and it made me have a miscarriage or whatever. And I don't want to deal with that. So I stick with supplements that are made from food, things that they understand, ingredients that they understand. So even if it's safe, you can do it, but I'm often, unless I know the patient very well, I often will steer away from that. So I do.
I do give nutritionals and, the omega-3s, normal things that women need in pregnancy. But with herbs, I am more cautious because they are always the first things to be blamed. Miscarriages happen so often. But if you happen to be on a herb and you go to your doctor, no, it's going to be that herb. And I'll give you a really extreme example of this. I saw a woman many years ago now, and she came to me. I can't remember what it was. I'm sure it was, nervous system things. And I gave her ashwagandha as one of the herbs in her formula. And next time she came back to me, I think she phoned me, and she said, look, you gave me ashwagandha, it's contraindicated in pregnancy. And I said, actually, it's not. There are different parts of ashwagandha that have been used maybe as abortifacients, but that's all a bit up in the air anyway. Some abortifacients are used topically as pastes or douches. Not orally, we don't always have this information, but it's not the ashwagandha we use or the part of the plant. And she said it's contraindicated in pregnancy. I said, actually, it's not. What I've given you is not contraindicated in pregnancy. But I said, you're not pregnant, are you? You didn't tell me you were. And I always ask that. And she said, no, I'm not. And I said, you didn't tell me you're planning to get pregnant. She said, I'm not, but this is contraindicated in pregnancy. And I just thought,
okay, you're not a person. Bye-bye.
Yes, exactly. We can get some crazy things happening in clinical practice. But
are there any? Go ahead.
If I'm using a herb in pregnancy, ashwagandha would be one of the main ones that I would use, the most common. For that tiredness that occurs, particularly first and third trimesters of pregnancy, I would use ashwagandha. The other herb that I will often use is milk thistle.
Yes, good.
Or the morning sickness of pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it works well.
What about chaste tree during the first trimester?
If women are already on chaste tree, when they become pregnant, and I might have them on chaste tree because they've got corpus luteal insufficiency and lower progesterone in that luteal phase, which is a major cause of miscarriage. So we really want to get that progesterone up. So we might have them on chaste tree while they're trying to conceive. Then I keep them on the chaste tree for the first trimester at the same dose that they're on it, because it's the corpus luteum keeps producing the progesterone for the first trimester until a placenta takes over. So there's no point giving it past the first trimester, but if they're on it when they become pregnant, keep them on it.
So let's talk about the low dose herbs, the ones that you would be very careful with. Not that they're unsafe, but ones that you would just really want to be very cautious with and make sure that you're maintaining that dose that's recommended. There are not very many of them.
There's not many of them. But the low dose herbs that I could think of, and I'll talk about each of them, would be poke root, black cohosh, ginkgo. Really? Can you think of any others that are quite low dose?
Those are the three. And I think the black cohosh, everybody's pretty comfortable with the ginkgo. And I think you have some wiggle room a little bit with ginkgo, but the black cohosh and the poke root, there's zero wiggle room.
Yes. Now with poke root, it's a fabulous herb, but the dose is 1 ml per day. Or say 5 ml per week. So if you're making up a week formulation, 15 ml a day, 100 ml, you put 5 ml poke root in that. Or you could do the 100 ml of the other herbs that you're wanting, and you think, they could use a bit of poke root because their lymphatic system's a bit sluggish or whatever. Then you could add the 5 ml, make it 105, which is exactly 1 week.
What do you use poke root for?
I use it. It's a fantastic lymphatic herb.
Yes, it is.
It can be good as part of skin conditions. It can be good for sinus congestion as well.
It's a depurative.
It's a depurative and a lymphatic.
Yes.
So depurative herbs we use for skin conditions. It's a great herb, but you absolutely have to stick to the dose. You cannot go above that 1 ml per day.
What happens if you do? So the moral of the story is follow the dosing recommendations for these herbs, because it's not that the herb, I love using poke root. I'm not afraid of it.
No, poke root is a fabulous herb. Yeah. You just stick to the dose. And as I say, it's a great lymphatic. It's great. It will move congestion at a much lower dose, just at the normal recommended dose, particularly when you combine it with some of the other things that we might want for that upper respiratory tract congestion, like goldenrod and golden seal, those sorts of things. But I predominantly used it as for skin, but predominantly as a lymphatic.
It works so good for lymphatic.
And you can mix it with other lymphatic things, and calendula, which we also is, that's another good, often I'll use calendula as a lymphatic as well, and just put that little tiny bit of poke root in the formulation.
Yeah. What about black cohosh?
Black cohosh is a fabulous female herb, particularly for menopausal symptoms. And in fact, when we look at all of those, they're called, phytoestrogenic herbs, which I think is a little bit misleading in some way, but that we use for women in menopause. Black cohosh is by far the best researched, by far.
Yeah, there's a lot of research.
It's a fantastic herb. There's no doubt that it works really well for the symptoms of menopause, particularly the hot flashes. There's a lot of research on that.
Yeah.
But the dose is 20 top dose, 20 ml per week or 2.5 ml per day. You also have to stick to that, because if you go over that, you're going to cause headaches, you're going to cause nauseousness.
I had that experience myself. I took about 5 mils all at one time in one dose and a little bit of water because I was having such bad hot flashes. And I thought, okay, I've got to try this black cohosh. And I have never had a headache like that and throw up, vomit, retching. But then when it was over, I was good. So the secondary effect, and not every herb has that kind of thing. Like you could dose ashwagandha pretty high, you could go above the range and there would never be an issue. But for those herbs that there are those, when the low dose is there, it's a little bit of a warning. I think I would take it as a warning to say, use care, because this one is not like ashwagandha where we've got, a little bit bigger range, or some of the other herbs that there's a really large range. You go up to 90 mils on some of these herbs. So basically take up the whole formula if you wanted it to. And
it's actually great when you're mixing liquid formulations, and you might, we can only put a certain number of herbs in a bottle. One thing I would say, if you start mixing liquids, don't be tempted to try and cover too much in one bottle of liquids, because you try to cram too many herbs in there and you'll have none of them at the therapeutic dose.
I always say that you're always going to be fine with 3, maybe 4. Yeah. And that's usually where I say, don't go more than 4. Don't go more than 4.
If we're using a mixture of Chinese and Ayurvedic herbs, which are often higher dosed, roughly we would say as a general rule, most of those will be 30 to 60 ml per week.
Okay.
If we're looking at the Western herbs, most of those are 20 to 40 ml per week. There's exceptions, of course, but that's a general rule. So if you're doing a formulation like I gave you first off with the eleuthero, the romania, and the ashwagandha, there's no way that you're going to get any more in there than 3 herbs. You can't,
right?
Because
it's
they're
not
all
a
high
fruit.
dose herbs.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're using some of the Western herbs that are 20 to 40 ml per week, you might be able to get 4 of those into a formulation.
Correct.
And occasionally, if you're using a very low dose herb, like poke root, then you can maybe get 5 in a formulation.
Exactly. But you're not going to do that very often. More often
No,
than
you're
not.
not going to do that very often. That's right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that, and, you know, ginkgo is low dose. It's a 2 to 1, so you don't need a high dose so much. So that's 1 ml per day as well. You know, and if you're putting it in a formula, just for simplicity, 5 ml per week. But, you know, ginkgo, you can go a little bit higher if you need to.
Yeah.
But for me, when I'm mixing liquid herbs, it's always a blessing when you've got, oh, yes, that's right, this one's low dose. I'll be able to put that in.
Add that in. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yes.
Exactly.
But, so the low dose, stick to the dose.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Berris, this has been amazing. And we've covered a ton of ground about how to blend these liquid herbs.
Can I just say one more thing before
Yeah.
we finish, Rhonda?
Yeah.
And that is whether you're using tablets or whether you're using liquids, when you're using St. John's wort, be careful of herb drug interactions.
Yes.
And you can find that on the website in the herb drug interaction chart. But this is a point where the liquid can be very beneficial because by far the majority of herb drug interactions with St. John's wort, it's caused by one of the constituents called hyperforin. And without going into a big spiel here about hyperforin, it's fairly unstable. It's more stable in tablets. In liquids, it's more unstable. So if you're wanting to use St. John's wort in a patient who are on a number of pharmaceutical medications, if you use the normal St. John's wort 1 to 2 liquid, that doesn't contain any hyperforin.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yes, but then we have the St. John's wort high grade that has higher iodine. That also, where at the time of manufacture, it will have some hyperforin in it, but in the liquid, the hyperforin degrades over time.
Quickly.
So the message here is, if you're using St. John's wort in patients on a number of pharmaceuticals, the liquids are the safest way to go.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about a herb drug interaction, but always look at the herb drug interaction chart. And I'm not saying don't use it in tablet form because I use it a lot in tablet form. You just have to make sure you're more informed when you're using the tablets.
Yeah, the herb drug interaction form, as well as the other resources and references that I mentioned, we talked about earlier, those are all inside Clinical Academies. If you are a member of Clinical Academy, you can find them in there. If you're not a member, you can absolutely join us. We would love to have you inside. All that is in there about all how to blend liquid herbs, how to label them, how to seal them, how to dose them, what the minimum maximum is, a bunch of examples, etc. And so that's why
that's a great resource.
That's why I wanted Berris to come on and chat about this, because it is such a powerful way for you to promote your practice, create that thing that only you do for your niche. And if you have those 1, 2, 3 kind of core blends, and then you can just tweak them slightly for every patient. There's a hot flash blend that we love using that has some sage in it. It's got some ashwagandha in it. And it's just a beautiful blend that helps reduce hot flashes. And women love it. In fact, not long ago, we were out of sage and there was a lot of menopausal women that were not happy because we couldn't make it. So you just find that herbal blend that you love, that works for the people that you serve. And then they just keep coming back and back and back. And this is what creates a sticky practice. Sticky as in patient sticky. So Berris, thank you so much. You are always—
Thank you so much. Wonderful. I hope we can do it again.
We will. And your smiling face always reminds me of a combination of the happy St. John's wort and the beautiful saffron.
Oh, thank you.
You're just so smiley and happy, and you have a beautiful smile, and you're just in love with these plants as I am.
And I do take quite a bit of those herbs some days, I have to say.
As we all do, some days more than others. That's right.
Yes,
Berris, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you.